The country I am studying is the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In this case study, we will be looking at 3 current events in Saudi Arabia. In the past year, Saudi Arabia has been making a lot of news in the United States, including reports on Saudi efforts in Yemen, a recent Sudanese compromise, and the assassination of reporter Jamal Khashoggi.
Jamal Khashoggi was a progressive Saudi journalist. After leaving Saudi Arabia in 2017, he became a frequent writer for the Washington Post. Khashoggi criticized the Saudi government and fought for free press, a dangerous act considering the royal family's zero-tolerance rule against dissidents and his tense history with them. In 2018, Khashoggi was reported missing by his fiancée, stating that he never left the Saudi consulate in Istanbul. The Saudi government's story regarding Khashoggi's disappearance changed multiple times and conflicted with the Turkish government's statements. After it was revealed that Khashoggi's death had been premeditated, the CIA declared that Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince, Mohammed bin Salman, had ordered the assassination. This event can be seen as a continuation of the royal family's long history of controlling the press and intolerance of dissidents. There has been international demands for freedom of press and criticism of human rights violations. The King of Saudi Arabia plays the role of a totalitarian absolute monarch, and the Crown Prince Mohammed is the de facto heir to that title. His involvement in the assassination has drawn concerns for his rule. The assassination has reaffirmed that Saudi Arabia continues their historically strict authoritarian rule and is unlikely to progress towards democracy in the near future. The assassination of Jamal Khashoggi increased tensions in Saudi Arabia's international relations. Because of the assassination, the United States is skeptical of Saudi efforts in Yemen. The issues in Yemen began as protests against Ali Abdullah Saleh, the authoritarian president, because of his failure to bring stability after a political transition following the Arab Spring. The protests resulted in his forced resignation and power handed over to his deputy, Hadi. Hadi had to deal with many issues, including jihadist attacks. The country's vulnerability set the stage for Houthi rebels, part of a Shia Muslim minority group. Concerned for rising rebellions in their own country, Saudi Arabia began airstrikes on the rebel groups. The United Arab Emirates led the efforts against the rebels in order to restore Hadi's government. However, the Emirates pulled out of the war earlier this summer. Their drawback has made success unlikely and called into question Saudi Arabia's crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman's credibility as a leader. The war has been costly to Saudi Arabia and killed thousands of civilians. Success does not appear imminent. However, the criticism is mostly from outsiders. The royal family and civilians seem to support the war, both out of fear that the rebels pose a threat to them and because the crown prince has suppressed any opposition in the media. While the Yemen war has drawn international criticism of the royal family, it has demonstrated their ability to control the narrative within the kingdom. As previously mentioned, the United States is skeptical of the war and not inclined to lend any assistance. If anything, the war has caused further rifts between the allies. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates joined forces again in Sudan in support of the existing authoritarian government fighting against protesters. Saudi Arabia has a history of enforcing authoritarian regimes in other countries in order to support their own legitimacy and stop an uprising that could possibly inspire democracy within Saudi Arabia. The protesters were fighting for democracy in the country and an end to the authoritarian government. News of civilian casualties spread across the globe, particularly of a massacre of demonstrators performing sit-ins. After pressure from the United States and African Union, Saudi Arabia switched sides and helped opposing sides of the Sudanese rebellion reach an agreement. Ultimately, they agreed to a nonviolent transition to a civilian military government. While it is unlikely that Saudi Arabia will make a similar move towards democracy anytime soon, their involvement in the compromise showed that they would not tolerate the violence in Sudan. Despite their history of supporting autocratic regimes in order to support their own, Saudi Arabia supported democracy in order to stop the violence against civilians.